So this week we're going to cover a complete guide to traveling in New Zealand on a working holiday visa. So if you want to try working abroad, if you want to try to get some amazing life and work experience before entering the real world, if you are one of those youth that just is being told all the time that you didn't experience to get a job that will therefore give you the experience that you need to get that job, and you're just kind of stuck in that stupid spiral that is just dawning on you, well, taking a gap year is a great opportunity for you to just find yourself. And I've gone through that myself. I've done working holiday visas in many different countries, in fact, and New Zealand was the last country I did that many moons ago, probably more than 14 years ago, and then I stayed here. But yeah, I've experienced working holiday in Canada, similar kind of scheme in Australia, in the US, and many other countries. So today we're going to be talking specifically about the New Zealand working holiday visa and all its advantages, the things you need to know about. And yeah, it's a pretty cool way to experience life in another country. A working holiday visa could give you 6 months, 12 months, or even at times, depending on which country you're from, 23 months of life in New Zealand. And it will be a huge life-changing experience, which has changed my life, right? So let's just talk a little bit about this through quite a chunky guide. We have a lot of information to go through, so let's get started. All right, so the first thing that we're going to be talking about for this is going to be, and I'll change the view for some variety, and that's going to be 8 different requirements that you have to meet in order to be able to get a working holiday visa in New Zealand. Before I'm going through all those 8 requirements, I want to stress that I am not a qualified immigration advisor, and you should not get any immigration advice from anyone which is not registered immigration advisor with Immigration New Zealand. So there is a website where you can check if somebody has an immigration license, and you should get all your personal advice there. All the information that I'm going to be sharing with you right now are publicly available information directly from the Immigration New Zealand website. Alright, so the first out of those 8 requirements that you need to meet is that you need to have a passport from one of the working holiday participating countries. So the working holiday visa scheme is basically a scheme in between New Zealand and a lot of other countries that allows them to basically exchange kind of workers and life experiences for youth, right? And so for that reason, not all the countries are eligible. And so there is about 45 different countries. Sometimes there is one extra added in, but there is about 45 different countries which are eligible for a working holiday in New Zealand. Let me go through that list. Argentina, Austria, Belgium, Brazil, Canada, Chile, China, Croatia, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Hungary, Hong Kong, Ireland, Israel, Italy, Japan, Korea, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malaysia, Malta, Mexico, Netherlands, Norway, Peru, the Philippines, Poland, Portugal, Singapore, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, Taiwan, Thailand, Turkey, United Kingdom, USA, Uruguay, and Vietnam. So if you do have or own a passport from one of those countries, then you are eligible for a working holiday in New Zealand. Otherwise, sadly, you are not eligible to get a working holiday in New Zealand, and you will have to go for other kind of visas if you want to come and work in New Zealand, or just come and visit, come for a holiday in New Zealand. The next requirement, so number 2, is the fact that you have to be between 18 and 35 years old. This depends on your country, right? So 18 to 30 years old is pretty much for every countries, but some countries have an upper limit age of 35 years old. Those countries includes Argentina, Canada, Chile, Czech Republic, Finland, Hungary, Slovakia, and Uruguay. But yeah, so you have to be between this age bracket, right? So the conditions are getting stricter as we continue, but yeah, so you have to have a passport from the country that are listed on point number 1. Then you need to have to be between the age bracket that I just listed, which is 18 to 30 years old for most countries, 35 for some of them. Then the next condition is a bit more of a grey kind of area, but you need to be coming to New Zealand primarily for holidays. So your main intention of coming to New Zealand needs to be to explore New Zealand and to discover what New Zealand has to offer, and not just coming to work or study in the country, right? Working needs to be a means to pay for your holiday and not the other way around. So if you're coming on a working holiday in New Zealand, your main intention should be to explore New Zealand. Next on our list, we have the minimum amount of funds required, and this may change, especially due to inflation right here. So the current minimum required is 4,200 New Zealand dollars and an outward travel ticket or funds to purchase one, right? So that means that you need to have 4,200 New Zealand dollars available on your account at time of entry in New Zealand. And you also need to either have your return tickets to go back home or enough fund to purchase one. Now, enough fund to purchase one is a little bit of a gray area. You never really know how much that really is, but this could be 1,000 New Zealand dollars. That's a relatively safe amount for that. The next point is that you need to meet some basic health and character requirements. So basically, when applying for the working holiday visa, you're going to have a series of checkboxes to check when applying for the visas, and basically you need to meet all of those. Those are very simple questions about your medical history and your criminal record. The next point is that you are not allowed to bring a child with you. So if you are a young parent, you are not able to bring your child with you on your working holiday in New Zealand. So it's really much like for that kind of gap year experience. So it's just a way to kind of frame which kind of mindset and which part of your life you currently are. On the next point, you need to have travel insurance. So you need to have travel and medical coverage for the length of your stay. So the wording is comprehensive travel and medical insurance for the length of your stay. So quite often your credit card, your travel credit card insurance is just not enough. So on the website at nzpocketguide.com, we actually do list some questions you need to ask your insurers before booking your insurance for your working holiday. And we also make some suggestions of local providers right here in New Zealand, which actually may be more efficient and also cheaper than your insurance back home. So make sure to have a look at NZ Pocket Guide, and then it's pretty simple. You're just going to go on travel tips, and then essentials, and then medical and travel insurance, and then we got you covered right in that section. So we have a full guide for you. And finally, on the last point is that you have to never been approved for a working holiday in New Zealand before. So that means you cannot do working holidays back to back. The application that you make is your one-off. So when you apply for your working holiday visa, make sure that you make it into New Zealand. Otherwise, you won't be able to apply again. All right, so those are 8 conditions that you need to meet, or 8 requirements you need to meet prior to applying for your working holiday visa. We'll talk about the application in a minute, but first, let's go back to the live chat. So next stage of the working holiday that we're going to be talking about before going back to the live chat is going to be when to apply for the working holiday in New Zealand. So once you've basically checked that you're eligible for the requirements for getting your working holiday visa in New Zealand, well, you basically can apply right away. However, some countries have quotas, right? So if your country have an unlimited amount of working holiday visa spots, meaning that means basically you can apply any time of the year. So whenever you're ready, just apply and you're good. But if your country has a quota, and you can find that straight away when you go on the Immigration New Zealand website, straight away you'll be able to see how many spots are available, right? So if your country has quotas, that means that at a certain time of the year, there is going to be an opening. So let's say you're from Mexico and then you're gonna have the opening, and that's an example. I can't remember the month for Mexico. Let's say it's in Mexico, sorry. Let's say it's in November. Well, at that point, you'll be able to start applying right in November. So November 1st, right? And so a lot of those countries have their quotas filled almost instantly, right? So I strongly advise you that if your country has a quota, to find the time and date in New Zealand. Again, the time and date that's written on the Immigration New Zealand website is always New Zealand time, and to apply right on that date. So make sure that you do apply on the Immigration New Zealand website exactly on the time. Sometimes they don't release the date until only about a month beforehand. So they will tell you like it's currently full, and then about a month beforehand they're going to release the date and say that's going to open on November 1st. First, so make sure you take the day off and you apply, right? Because sometimes it's gone in minutes. Sometimes it takes a little longer. Like for example, I think the country is Latvia. Latvia has like 200 spots, and that's available for like for the whole year, right? They never fill up they never fill up the quota. That's the word I was looking for. So yeah, but try to apply basically as soon as your quota opens. Again, if you are from a country that is that has unlimited visa, such as Germany, France, or the UK, you can apply any time of the year. I know it's not fair, and I don't really know the ins and outs as to why they make some of those decisions, but that's how it is. Now, the question becomes, when is your working holiday visa valid, right? So this is one of the things that a lot of people don't really get, right? They want to apply and then fly to New Zealand because they say, I'm a 12-month visa, right? So try to picture a timeline for me, right? So right here, you are applying for your working holiday visa, right? From there, you have 1 year to enter the country, right? So let's say that within 6 months, you enter the country. So after 6 months, you enter the country. And let's say that your visa is valid, your working holiday visa from your country. Some of them is 6 months, as I say, some of them is 12, some of them is 23 months. But let's say that you're entering after 6 months. So you applied on January 1st, right? Let's say you enter in July 1st, right? From July 1st, your visa is going to be valid for that period of time. So let's say this example is 12 months. So from that, you're going to be valid for a year from then. So your visa is going to be valid for all the way to like the next year, July 1st. Okay, so you are not losing month if you have applied and you're not entering the country straight away. So it's still always a good point, a good way, a good thing to do to apply early, right? So once you apply for the visa, you've got 12 months to enter the country. If you don't, your visa is void and you can never apply again. So don't do that. But once you apply for your visa, make your way in New Zealand within 12 months, and then here you go. You have another 12 months or 6 months or 23 months, depending on when you are from. All right, so that's kind of how the application timeline works. Next up, we're going to talk about quickly how to prepare for your application. Caleb says, will working in New Zealand cover my living cost, or will I have to use my savings? And how should I split my working time and traveling time? That's a very good question, Caleb. I appreciate you. So will working in New Zealand cover your living cost? Yes, it will. The minimum wage in New Zealand is above $20 an hour. The thing that's going to sting you the most is going to be the cost of rent and food, right? This is quite expensive. So basically, you'll need to work full-time and kind of being in more of a saving mode in order to be able to save money for traveling again. So usually the way I suggest people to kind of split that, and that's something that I help all of our Patreon, which are on a working holiday visa, to kind of work through, so feel free to check us on Patreon, by the way, if you want kind of like, more one-on-one assistance for that. But yeah, so what I usually suggest is that have plans and savings for 1 month of travel when you arrive in New Zealand, right? The reason being is that when you arrive in New Zealand, basically for your first week, you're going to want to do all your paperwork, like submitting for a bank account, for IRD, which is kind of your tax number and all those kind of things, in order to be employable. However, this paperwork can take a little bit of time. So it's usually wise to kind of enjoy your time in New Zealand and get to discover the country. Also, most people arrive in Auckland, and Auckland is probably one of the worst places in New Zealand to actually base yourself and do your working holiday there, right? Because it's the most expensive one, and it also does not represent New Zealand. So if you take a month of traveling around New Zealand, that should give you a good opportunity to see a lot of different places all around the country. And for that reason, you should be able to kind of find a place that is actually more representative to New Zealand, give you a better experience, give you lower cost of living and better wages than working in Auckland, right? So have the time to travel for 1 month. Then, depending on how much savings you came to New Zealand with, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the video, but depending on how much savings you came to New Zealand with, either work a season, which is 3 months, or between 3 and 6 months, basically. But, obviously the best would be to work for 3 months. Then I will suggest you do another couple of months of travel for sure, just to continue to explore New Zealand, and then you can do another 3 months let's say, ish of work, in order to kind of replenish your funds, do another bit of travel, and then being able to go on your way with still a little bit of money in your savings. So that's kind of how I will split my time between working time and traveling time. That's what I did. That's what Laura did. You know, I met Laura very early during a working holiday, and that's what I did advise her to do. We were not even together back in the days, and you know, that's the kind of thing that she did. And so that's usually what gives you the best kind of work balance. And also it allows you to experience working life in two different places as well. Because again, Caleb, you're coming to New Zealand on a working holiday visa. You're coming in New Zealand to actually get a life experience, right? So that's how I will kind of split it if I were you. Now, when you are doing the travel times, you know, the first like 3 to 6 months and the last like 3 months as well, when you're doing that travel time, I strongly suggest that you put yourself in saving modes, right? So that means not going to the pub every night, not spending like, you know, your $150 going out, all those kind of things, right? And actually saving that money to be able to fuel your next travel. Otherwise, well, that's going to be a little tougher, as well, you know, cost of life in New Zealand is not the cheapest just yet. I hope that answered your question, Caleb. If you have any follow-up, go nuts. I really appreciate this question. So now we're going to be covering how to prepare to apply for the working holiday visa in New Zealand. And it's relatively easy. You know, it's going to be an entirely online application on the Immigration New Zealand website, which is immigration.govt.nz. And in order to be ready, well, you need a computer in order to be able to apply. It's going to be significantly easier than doing it on your phone, right? The Immigration New Zealand website is not perfect on mobile. Just saying, it's a good internet connection, especially if you're applying and you have like a quota kind of system, because you really don't want it to kind of fail just right on the go and miss your spot. You're gonna need a Visa or MasterCard, and it doesn't have to be yours. If you don't have one of your own, you can you know, ask your parents, something like that, but you will need to be able to pay for the fee in that sense. You obviously need your passport, and you need another form of ID, such as your driver license, for instance, but you need 2 forms of ID. If you are applying for the 23 months working holiday visa, you will need a medical and X-ray certificate, so do be aware of that, and make sure that you go on the immigration website earlier so you can do that, so rather than having to do that last minute. And obviously you need to log in, therefore you need to register on the Immigration New Zealand website. Now, when it comes down to applying for the working holiday visa, it's relatively easy, right? So as soon as your quota opens, or whenever you kind of want to do it, you go on the Immigration New Zealand website and you go through basically 4 main sections. The first section is the personal section. So that's where you are completing all the information about yourself, such as your ID, you know, your name, your occupation, all those kind of things. So there's just kind of like a few things. So there's 3 main sections, basically: personal details, identification, and the third one, which is occupations. And that one is optional, but you may as well kind of fill it up. Then the next section is health. So that will determine if you need to provide more information, right? So depending on what you answer, if you're coming for 23 months, you have to do the medical certificate and the X-ray certificate. But if you're not, if you're coming for a shorter period of time, you still may need to provide some supporting documents. So just make sure you answer those questions truthfully. Then the next section is character, so it's going to ask you some questions about your criminal record and all those kind of things. Same thing, be truthful. Remember that there are a lot of international database of those kind of information, right? So there is no need to lie on there. They probably already know it. They're just making sure that, you know, you're saying the right thing. And lastly, you have to answer some questions which are working holiday specific, with your intended travel date, which doesn't have to be accurate. It's okay. It's for survey purposes only, and some other questions. So yeah, on nzpocketguide.com we do have a full walkthrough on how to apply for that, so do make sure that you're following it up. It's really easy, and at the end of the application you'll have to pay a fee that's going to be between 35 to 455 New Zealand dollars, and that fee will include the IVL, which is the International Visitor Levy, which you won't have to pay when you come into New Zealand afterwards, so that's a good thing. So yeah, that's very simple to apply online. And yeah, next up we'll talk about how to check how it has been approved, your working holiday visa, and also what it looks like. I'll show you one on screen. So the next stage of your working holiday visa is going to check that your visa has been approved, and also check what it looks like, and be confused by the fact that it looks really weird. So first up, checking that your visa has been approved. It's pretty simple. You can just log into your Immigration New Zealand kind of a portal, and you'll be able to find it here. But most importantly, and I know you're gonna know, the way you're gonna know that that your working holiday visa has been approved is because Immigration New Zealand will send you an email, usually within 30 weekdays of completing the application. As a general rule of thumb, it can go much faster than that. Sometimes 24 hours, right? So yeah. So either you get the email, either you can check online. Now, if you were to check online, you will find a paper and you'll be like, well, it just does look very ugly, doesn't it? And yes, it does. Let's have a look at it. I've prepared that for you, beautiful people. Ta-da! So this is what the working holiday looks like. It is just a letter, basically. And there is another page of that, but the page is, it's just the rest of text, and it's about like that much more text, right? So yeah, but that is that way I need to point where Laura was. Ta-da! This is what the working holiday visa look like. So mostly the working holiday visa is an e-visa, and that means that it's a visa that that is just existing within the system of Immigration New Zealand. So there's not really a stamp and like a beautiful kind of a floriferous certificate saying that you have a visa. It's not a full page on your passport or anything like that, right? Like in a lot of other countries, you can have, like, some visas can look actually damn fancy and actually, I think, can be a collector. I kept my my old passport just because some of the visas are actually kind of really fun. So, like when you change your passport, right? They just cut a part of your passport and they ask, do you want to keep it? And I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. The New Zealand working holiday visa is not that cool. It just looks like that. It's just a letter. So you can print it if it makes you feel better, but otherwise you really do not basically need it. It's just that letter which is in your file, so you can just show your passport and be good with it. So this e-visa, you can find it as a PDF version on your immigration portal. So yeah, that is what the visa looks like. Next up, we'll talk about arriving in New Zealand on a working holiday visa. Alright, so now let's talk about arriving in New Zealand on a working holiday visa. So quickly, what's going to happen to you at the airport? So you're landing in New Zealand. You're landing on the plane, right? And you are touching the tarmac of New Zealand. Welcome, kia ora, to New Zealand. We are glad to have you on board. So you're going to do the same thing that most people are going to be doing. You're going to go through passport controls, customs, and biosecurity. We do have a full articles on nzpocketguide.com and videos on the channel about arriving in New Zealand, about the passport control, the customs and biosecurity, and what you need to be aware of. And all of those that applies to every traveler applies to you. So right now, I'm just going to cover what is different for you on a working holiday visa, right? So on a working holiday visa, you may be asked proof of some of the things that you've declared during your application. You may not be asked any question. You may be asked all the questions, or you may be asked only some of the questions. Nonetheless, you need to be prepared for all of them. So one of the questions that can be asked of you is to provide evidence of having the sufficient funds. If you remember a little bit earlier, I was talking about having the 4,200 New Zealand dollars. So at that point, you will need to show a recent, I said, bank statement showing that you have such amount of funds, available to be withdrawn, right? The next question that you could be asked is your evidence of outward travel tickets to leave New Zealand, basically, or sufficient funds to purchase one. So at that point, you can show that you have a return ticket, to get out of New Zealand, or you can show that you have an extra 1,000 New Zealand dollars-ish, depending on where you're from. Obviously, some countries it could be more, but that you have an extra $1,000 on your bank statement, that you have that. So it's on top of your 4,200 New Zealand dollars. And another question that you could be asked is the evidence of travel insurance. So if you recall that, it's basically the 8 things you need to know. Well, you kind of need to prove that, right? And so you will need to show your copy of your policy certificate from your insurance. So it's unlikely that you'll be asked all of those questions, but being prepared for them is the right idea. All right, so next up, we'll talk about getting set up in New Zealand and what to do in your first week. So next up on our list, we have getting set up in New Zealand. So what you need to do in your first basically week in the country. And I have a whole video on the channel going over everything you need to do on your first week on a working holiday visa. So for an in-depth coverage of all that, I'll refer you to that. And there is also a link, well, at the bottom of this video actually, to an article on NZ Pocket Guide, as sometimes I tend to speak a little too fast with a funny accent. So maybe you want to, sit down and read that. We have a complete guide for you at the ready. All right, so very early into your working holiday visa in New Zealand, and we strongly recommend you to do that in the first week, you need to start kind of putting the building blocks of your life in New Zealand. And so that means basically staying in your city of arrival, which is likely to be Auckland, for the first kind of week that you're here. And so during this week, you're going to want to obviously get over the jet lag, do a bit of groceries so you can cook in your hostels. We suggest staying in hostels so you can meet like-minded people in the same situation than you. Setting up your local phone number, so basically getting either an eSIM or a SIM card for your phone, opening a bank account, applying for an IRD number, which is your tax number in New Zealand, allowing you to work and travel in the country. You will not be able to find job in New Zealand unless you have a working bank account in New Zealand as well as an IRD number. So get that done quickly to make your life easier. If you want to apply for a Kiwi Access card, it could be a good idea as well. So Kiwi Access card is basically an ID in New Zealand that will allow you to go into bars and everything. So that means that you don't have to carry your passport everywhere, which is quite handy. Remember, if you want to go into a bar in New Zealand, you will be asked your ID. And the only valid ID that you have from overseas is your passport. Even if you're from the UK, from the US, from Australia, and from all those other places that speak English, your driving license is not recognized as a valid ID to enter a bar. So you need your passport, or you do need a Kiwi Access card. So you may as well do that. It's relatively cheap to do, but it can significantly improve your life. And then the next thing that you want to do on the first week is to plan how you're going to be traveling around New Zealand. Should you want to buy a camper car? Should you want to buy a car? Should you want to travel by bus, etc.? There's many different options to travel around New Zealand, and so for this reason, that's why you want to start setting up early on during your trip. Same thing, we have guides on every single one of the things that I mentioned, from getting over the jet lag, to doing your groceries, to setting up your phone, to opening your bank account, to getting an IRD number, to applying for Kiwi Access card, and to planning your transport around New Zealand. We have guide of each of those items on NZ Pocket Guide, link in the description below. Next up, you have been enjoying your working holiday in New Zealand and you want to stay in New Zealand longer. That happens, it's okay. Well, there are a couple of schemes that allow you to extend your working holiday visa in New Zealand. So if you're from the UK or from Canada, you have the options to extend your working holiday from 12 months to 23 months, right? That's the maximum you can be doing. So those are some options, and to do that, you just need to go on the Immigration New Zealand website. You will at that point have to do the medical and x-ray and all that, and you may have to sort that out right here in New Zealand. If you're more comfortable in doing that in your own country, it may be a smart idea to kind of apply straight away for 23 months. We do have guides for both of those things, specific guides for UK and Canadian citizens on NZ Pocket Guide. Finally, if you are from any other countries and you want to extend your working holiday visa, you could get yourself an extra 3 months in New Zealand. I know it's not much, but there is a working holiday visa extension available of 3 months. And that will require you to provide evidence that you have worked in the agriculture, horticulture or viticulture industry. Sorry, those words. Okay. A horticulture or viticulture industry for a total of 3 months. It doesn't have to be full-time work, but it needs to be at least part-time on a regular basis. So the position must be something like planting, picking, maintaining, harvesting, and packing crops. You will have to have evidence such as pay slips or letters from your employers to supply. And same thing, this application can be done through your immigration portal, so on immigration.govt.nz. So those are the ways to extend your working holiday visa in New Zealand. Alright, so let's talk about how much money you need to have when traveling on a working holiday in New Zealand. So the New Zealand government obviously require you to have a certain amount of funds, and they call that sufficient funds. And it's 4,200 New Zealand dollars that we were talking about. And if you're coming on a 23-month visa, that would be 350 New Zealand dollars per month of intended stay, which is equivalent to about the same. All right, so that's what they say as a sufficient fund right now, with the increase of cost of living, as well as the fact that, well, we've seen a lot of people coming in and trying to settle as well. You know, you've got to, you know, let's say you want to even get started working straight away. You're like, I'm going to come with a bare minimum and I'm going to work straight away. Well, first up, you have to be able to live without working and without any income for the first couple of weeks at least, because, you know, you have to do your bank account, and then you have to do your IRD number and all that, and it's not something which is happening instantly, right? So you're gonna have some inherent cost having to pay for your accommodation, all that. Even if you want to settle in an apartment, you have to be able to pay for the bonds and all those kind of things. So the bare minimum that we recommend to people to come into New Zealand with is 6,500 New Zealand dollars. That's the bare minimum that we recommend you have, so you don't have that big Damocles sword above your head. On top of that, you need to have your return flight, so that's $6,500 plus your return flight, or plus an extra $1,000, and obviously have paid for your insurance for the entirety of your stay. This is what we recommend. That will cover basically a first couple of months of travel to be comfortable, being able to budget for accommodation, travel, doing a few activities, pay for your food, or your first kind of time of being able to actually settle somewhere and have to pay for those inherent costs. Obviously, it means that you still will have some money onto your bank account when you start working and when you start being paid. But that is a good thing. That is a good thing, so you're not too stressed. And that also means that you have no stress in being able to socialize with your coworkers and actually make friends and all that, because everything that you do in life has an inherent cost. So having a little bit of money to be able to fall back will be, in our opinion, the right thing to do. So remember that this doesn't mean that this is the only money you're going to be spending, as there is a lot of expenses before you arrive in New Zealand, from your visa application fee, your flight ticket, your travel insurance. If you decide to go with a working holiday program, this can run you a couple of $1,000s, and obviously some gears from your working holiday visa. Should it be backpack, hiking shoes? You need some good hiking shoes, etc. So do be aware that saving up for a working holiday visa is the right thing to do, and coming with a bare minimum is, in our opinion, obviously the wrong thing to do. So this is everything you need to know about a working holiday visa in New Zealand. I want to thank everybody that kind of joined this video. I want to thank Caleb for his very relevant questions, which I was able to include this because that was recorded live. And if you want more information about a working holiday visa in New Zealand, you can head to nzpocketguide.com. There is a link in the description of this video, and there is really a lot of information for you. And if you want our support, being able to ask us your questions all the time using our Facebook group, exclusive to our Patreon members, well, join us on Patreon. It's about $5 a month at the low level, and you'll get a ton of support and a ton of help. And we even do weekly calls, group calls, where you can ask us some of your questions. It's a lot of fun, and it could be a good safety net or something reassuring for you when planning your trip to New Zealand. So keep that in mind.